A retired Court of Appeal judge, Sir Martin Moore-Bick, has been appointed to lead the public inquiry into the Grenfell Tower disaster. The news comes as police say at least 80 people are believed to have died in the fire, but that they don't expect to be able to confirm the final number for at least another 6 months. Well, the Prime Minister, Theresa May, released this statement on the appointment in the last few minutes. Mrs May said the inquiry would have full powers, including the power to compel the production of documents and to summon witnesses. She said the goal was to find someone who would be best suited to the task and available to start work immediately, so that we can get answers to what happened as quickly as possible. Sir Martin is described by her as a highly respected and hugely experienced former Court of Appeal judge. She added that the immediate priority is to establish the facts of what happened and to take the necessary action to prevent a similar tragedy from happening. And it was also important, she said, that all the wider lessons from both this catastrophe are learnt. She went on to say that we must get to the truth about what happened. No stone will be left unturned, although we cannot wait for ages to learn the immediate lessons. There's also been a statement from Sir Martin himself issued on his behalf by the Cabinet Office. He says the purpose of this independent inquiry is to discover the truth about what happened at Grenfell Tower, so that we can learn lessons for the future and ensure that a tragedy of this kind never happens again. It is vitally important that the inquiry be open, transparent and fair to all those whose involvement with Grenfell Tower comes under scrutiny. I understand the desire of local people for justice for them and for all those involved in whatever way will best be served by a vigorous inquiry that gets to the truth as quickly as possible. Well, with me now is our legal affairs correspondent Clive Coleman. And Clive, first and foremost, the families of the victims and survivors, they will want to know more about who this man is and why he's been chosen.
OK, well, let me tell you a bit more about him. So he is Sir Martin Moore-Bick, a very recently retired, very senior Court of Appeal judge. He's 70 years of age. Judges have to retire at the age of 70. He became a QC in 1986. He served as a Deputy High Court judge before being appointed to the High Court in 1985, where he served mainly in the commercial court. Now, that's of some importance because his practice as a barrister was in commercial work and in particular in shipping. And what that means is that he will have had experience of, if you like, heavy engineering type of issues and cases, because in shipping cases, if one ship collides with another, the cause of a ship sinking, you will need to deal with experts in that field, many different experts at times. So he has experience of getting his head around really complex technical issues, although different in nature, perhaps not different in terms of the complexity of the issues. So that is something that makes him qualified to take on this job. What we know about his personal background is that he's married, he has children. He could be described, I think, very fairly as an establishment figure. His brother is a retired army general. So he has really, as I said, the kind of classic CV of a highly successful Court of Appeal judge.
Clive, we're just going to listen to a clip. This is Olu Talabi, one of the survivors of the Grenfell fire who escaped from the 14th floor of the tower block, and he's been giving his reaction to the news of this appointment.
We need a criminal judge. This is the same person that sent a woman that in favour of Westminster Council, it sent a woman all the way to Milton Keynes from Westminster. This is not right. Supreme Judge had to reverse the case. This is not right. We need serious justice, and this man is not going to give us any justice. We haven't got no influence in this. I think we should have an influence on whoever is going to, in the process of this, and this is not, I don't feel this is right.
So that survivor, Clive, saying that a criminal judge is needed. What can you tell us about that?
And what he was talking about there is a particular decision that Sir Martin Moore-Bick, a judgment of his in the Court of Appeal. Now, this was a case that involved a woman called Titania Nzola Meso. She was a resident in Westminster, but because of the benefits cap, she became homeless. And as a result of that, Westminster City Council wanted to house her some 50 miles away in Bletchley. Now, councils are entitled to do that, but they have to take into account a raft of factors, including, of course, her ties to the area. She was a woman with 5 children, a single-parent family. She was in poor health, and she was asked to go effectively 50 miles away, to relocate 50 miles away. Now, Sir Martin Moore-Bick, when he was sitting in the Court of Appeal, had the job of scrutinising whether Westminster City Council had come to that decision lawfully. Now, he decided that they had done. It has to be said, as was mentioned just there, the case then went to the Supreme Court, and it was pretty much a thumping reversal of that decision. Lady Hale in particular, I mean, it was a unanimous decision of the Supreme Court, and Lady Hale gave a pretty strong judgment, which was the polar opposite of the judgment that Sir Martin Moore-Bick had given. Now, just to put that into context, Sir Martin Moore-Bick had been in the Supreme Court for 11 years. So we're talking about one of his judgments within that 11-year period. But some of the newspapers have written this up this morning and are nodding to the possibility, they would say, that there is some sort of view that he has about vulnerable families, and that clearly has upset some people. But as I say, one has to look at it in context. One has to also bear in mind that on the technical side, and finding out precisely what happened in terms of the causing of that fire and how the materials stood up to the flames and so forth, in that area, because of the work he's done within his commercial practice and in the commercial court, he is well qualified.
OK, Clive, interesting to get more background from you. Clive Coleman, let's talk about this some more with our assistant political editor, Norman Smith, who's at Westminster. And Norman, we know the government has had difficulties, to say the least, with judicial appointments to major inquiries. It's very important that they get this right, isn't it?
I think, Anita, there will be some concern at that initial response we heard from that relative of the Grenfell Tower tragedy, because absolutely critical to getting this inquiry off the ground is ensuring the judge has the support and the confidence of the relatives. Without that, this inquiry will be in trouble. And so, I mean, I don't know how representative that individual is, but if there are wider concerns about the background of the judge, whether he has a criminal background, previous court rulings, I mean, in short, his first step has to be, I would imagine, to meet the relatives and to reassure them and to bring them into the process, because we know they are going to be consulted about the terms of reference of this inquiry. And as I say, if there's any sort of doubts they harbour about his ability to get to the truth, and that will be a pretty fundamental stumbling block, particularly when you remember what happened to the child abuse inquiry, which had a series of false starts, in part because of question marks about the background of the individuals chosen to head the inquiry, and in part too because of the lack of confidence of some of the survivors groups in the ability of the judges to carry out a rigorous inquiry. So that is a pretty fundamental challenge, and dependent on that, I suspect, will be the political reaction, because at the moment, just talking to politicians, I think everyone's holding back. Everyone wants this inquiry to get up and running. Everyone doesn't want it to be sort of mired in controversy and difficulties and delay. They want it to start and to get to the truth. But if the relatives are unhappy, then I expect you will hear politicians too echoing that sort of disquiet. So it is very, very important that he manages to command the confidence of the survivors.
OK, Norman, thank you very much. Norman Smith.